This is a social marketing intervention by Tani Kirkpatrick. It has been formed on the topic of depression in Australian youth. This report and presentation has been authorised by Associate Professor Maria, Course Coordinator of Social Marketing at the University of the Sunshine Coast. The presentation has been formed with the purpose of developing an innovative, ethical intervention plan that addresses the social cause of depression in Australian youth. The main limitation of this presentation is the consideration that only secondary sources were used to complete the report, consisting of academic and credible resources. This report aims to build upon previous literature to identify and formulate a singular marketing intervention which could be implemented to alter undesired behaviours in Australian youth regarding depression. The intervention discusses the 4 marketing Ps: product, price, place, and promotion, as well as highlighting important stakeholders and potential partners. The intervention takes place within schools to approach the issue directly at its root and provide solutions to prevent unintended consequences that may arise. Depression is an affective disorder, also known as major depressive disorder or clinical depression, which directly affects one's emotions and behaviors, leading to both physical and emotional problems. Mostly affecting youth between the ages of 12 and 20, depression is characterized by persistent feelings of sadness and loss of interest. General issues that formulate and build on these disorders include high adversity regarding family issues, academic commitments, relationships, and body image. These lead to the characteristics of poor interpersonal skills and negative thought processes generally associated with major depressive disorder. Now to give some further insight, although these are often alerted problems for youths with depression, the illness can frequently be further rooted to exposure to family or community violence, chronic poverty, physical and sexual abuse, bereavement, or parental divorce or separation in younger children. Now we'll look at the importance of the disorder. The statistics show an ever-increasing statistic of 1 in 16 Australians who are currently suffering some degree of depression. 13% of these cases have been diagnosed to be lifetime cases, meaning the sufferer will never fully recover. Up to 50% of these lifetime cases are evident by the age of 14, however, aren't always diagnosed until as late as young adulthood. Depression in Australian youth is then further extended beyond the individual as it also affects their families and the community surrounding them. It is the leading cause of suicide, which statistically recorded as Australia's biggest killer of young adults. The figures stand at 324 in 2012 in comparison to 198 deaths caused by car accidents, the second highest Australian death rate. In 2006, the government released a youth mental health foundation by the name of Headspace. Their aim was to provide new pathways to mental health care for Australian youth between the ages of 12 and 25. Headspace is still known today as Australia's leading mental health foundation and triggered the release of many school-based programs focusing on promoting well-being in younger children. These programs were all extremely effective and created a wave across the nation alerting parents of the seriousness of depression in their children. Existing literature outlined the underlying behaviours relating to depression in Australian youth to be low sense of self-efficacy, denial, stigma regarding the mental illness, and lack of support from friends and family. These elements all have direct effect on aspects of the social cognitive theory, also known as cognitive behaviour theory. Low self-efficacy is when one has negative emotions and thoughts towards their ability to excel in certain situations or accomplish specific tasks. This has a direct effect to the behavioral aspect of the social cognitive theory. This causes negative behaviors in individuals when approaching goals, tasks, and challenges in both work and personal environments. Denial affects the cognitive process. The literature outlines that the negative stigma around mental illnesses such as depression leads to people receiving diagnosis falling into a sense of denial. This further falls into opinions as to whether treatment is as effective as it is said to be. These negative thought processes created by the stigma around depression can often lead one further down the path towards clinical depressive episodes after diagnosis has been acknowledged. Lastly, the problem of stigma around depressive illnesses combined with the lack of support from friends and family hugely affects Australian youth's environments. The stigma is derived from lack of support, which then falls back into gaps regarding information on depressive symptoms and available support. Given the correct information, parents would have the insight to be able to properly look out for their children, leading to earlier recognition of depressive symptoms and treatment being implemented prior to the illness becoming unrecoverable. It is suggested that in order to alter behaviours and aid the increasing problem of depression in Australian youth, interventions focusing on both downstream and midstream activities. This will not only focus on the children directly suffering depression, but will encourage them to seek help and prepare loved ones on how to deal with recognition of the illness in friends and family. The intervention should influence behaviours by establishing a new habit or repeated behaviour where sufferers are confident to seek consistent help instead of hiding the problem at hand. Interventions could also modify a current behaviour among families and communities by creating modifications of elements within the home and society that essentially act as triggers for depression. Depression in Australian youth is a growing problem that needs to be further addressed and acknowledged. Depression can lead to problems in youth society as serious as depression and therefore needs to be approached with care. There is a direct relationship between early depressive symptoms and self-efficacy, therefore the intervention should focus on increasing children's sense of self-efficacy through learned behaviours. The proposed intervention suggested to increase Australian youth's sense of self-efficacy is to develop government-funded in-school activity workshops that focus on educating students of the symptoms and serious implications of depression, while also giving students a greater sense of behavioural control and self-efficacy. The identified target audience consists of youths under the age of 16 in rural and outer suburban areas, as this is identified as the audience with the highest rate of depressive symptoms. There are often less diagnosed cases in rural areas and less self-help from sufferers due to the distance between towns and available support. Furthermore, it has been identified that depression is more likely to occur in females, further defining the intervention's target reach. Workshops will be compulsory throughout high schools in rural Australia to ensure that the message is reached by all adolescents at risk of developing or suffering symptoms of depression. This will offer close support to those in rural towns who face the difficulty of displacement with regards to treatment. They will not only create the mentality within students of the school being a safe place to seek help for such symptoms, but will also lead them to be more understanding and comfortable among their peers. So the important stakeholders. Primary stakeholders of the intervention include students, teachers, and guest speakers. Indirect stakeholders include parents of the children participating schools. Other important stakeholders include Australian education departments and the Australian government, who can enforce the workshops within rural Australian high schools and provide the necessary funding. Next is the potential partners. Potential partners include mental health organisations such as Beyond Blue, Headspace, and Lifeline, who all currently provide support both online and through telecommunications regarding information about affective disorders, including depression. Local psychologist officers could also act as important partners in the intervention by acting as a network for emotional support for sufferers who are brought forward through the workshops. They are a key element for the intervention as they offer professional support and information outlets to students seeking help or knowledge. The first of the 4Ps is the product strategy. Product can be broken down into the three segments of core, actual, and augmented. The core product is the desired behaviour, which is the increase of self-efficacy among Australian youth. The desired behaviour and the specific way to achieve this is known as the actual product. Therefore, the actual product is the increase of self-efficacy through educational and social interactive workshops, which create a comfortable environment in which for kids to open up about existing problems and feel supported within the community. Lastly is the augmented product, which refers to the tangible objects and services which help form the desired behaviour. Therefore, the augmented product regarding the intervention are the psychologists offering support to students, the guest speakers, and the included handouts for students and their families. These all work together to create the desired behavioural change. The second P in the promotional mix is the price strategy. As the projected intervention will be enforced throughout schools and is proposed to be government funded, there are no direct monetary costs for the students or families involved. As the workshops will be implemented throughout school hours, the time and effort required to participate in such activities does not pose as a threat to the success of the intervention. The main implication is the time given by guest speakers and psychologists who will run and support the success of the workshops. There are, however, monetary rewards for the families involved, as early detection will lead to reduced costs in therapy and counselling for children later in life as the problem develops further. Next is the place strategy. The intervention will be carried out in high schools throughout rural Australian regions. They will be embedded into the school curriculum and therefore be compulsory for all students ranging from grade 8 to 12. In order to have maximum reach, the workshops will be a quarterly event enabling multiple opportunities for all ages to benefit and find the necessary comfort and support. This will also give psychologists and speakers time to attend all workshops throughout Australia due to appropriate time travel. The workshops will furthermore be backed up by take-home pamphlets for students to share with their parents and keep as a guide for where and when to seek appropriate support. The pamphlets will also act as a reminder of strategies learned to keep self-efficacy levels high throughout one of the most important character-building times of the students' lives. Last is the promotion strategy. It is recommended in order to encourage students' full involvement in the programs that both schools and the government work to create hype around the programs. This will make it an activity of interest among Australian youth. This could be achieved by posters around school, social media advertising on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube ads placed on topics of high interest to youth. This will gain maximum reach for the appropriate target audience and encourage excitement about the upcoming programs. Next is the creative strategy and media planning. I've done up a simple guideline for suggested workshop outline, which I will now show to you on the projector. The evaluation strategy determines the effectiveness of the proposed intervention. This will be carried out through feedback forums from students, teachers, and speakers. This will further be backed by analysing statistical data relating to serious affective disorders. Parents will be given feedback questionnaires to attain information regarding students' confidence levels and self-efficacy. Students will also be given a questionnaire to determine their insights gained from the workshop, whether the intervention made them more comfortable around their peers and teachers, and if they found the workshops worthwhile. It will also determine if their comfort about the topic of depression has improved. Lastly, teachers will report any noticeable behaviour changes among students within the classroom and in their work. The intervention is proposed to be implemented over 2 years, therefore giving enough data from questionnaires and statistics to determine its effect on depression in Australian youths. There are two main potential unintended consequences that have been noted. The main unintended threat that is posed through the proposition of this intervention plan is that by raising awareness of such a serious mental illness, students may form feelings of fear and confusion. This will only pose as a problem if students are not supplied with correct or adequate information regarding the topic and seeking help. The information is also not to be given in a threatening way, however, in an educational manner which should inform students of all aspects, not just outline the negatives. A further potential unintended consequence is the singling out of students suffering from depression. The workshops encourage students to share their experiences, which could lead to bullying in the schoolyard. This will be closely monitored by teachers. However, workshops should be encouraging in such a way that students will learn to be supportive of one another instead of singling out those who are struggling. To summarise this presentation, it is conclusively identified that affective disorders, namely clinical depression, in Australian youth is a social cause for concern due to its increasing impact on society. This warrants the need for this proposed intervention to be implemented in order to cause positive effects on depression statistics in children around Australia. The intervention is government funded and involves workshops to be integrated into rural high school curriculums, making it a compulsory activity for all students studying grade 8 to 12. These workshops will be held quarterly and be backed by take-home pamphlets for students to share with their parents and use as a guide for coping mechanisms. Evaluation of the intervention will be achieved through questionnaires given to students, parents, teachers' feedback, and through re-evaluation of statistics regarding depressive disorders in youth. This will determine whether levels of self-efficacy have increased and in turn reveal whether it has had a positive effect on the increase in statistics. The potential unintended consequences of confusion and bullying have been addressed and practical cautions to prevent such consequences have been noted.